All right, we're back with Michael D'Angelo. This time we are talking about old K style cymbals. So new cymbals that are designed, treated, processed in a way to sound old. Thanks for being back.
Of course, thank you for having me.
We have picked out a few from a whole rack of options of ones that kind of capture what we feel like we're hearing when we listen to those old Ks. So if you haven't caught it, last video was all about old K Zildjians, dealing with the Constantinople era all the way up to new stamp era and beyond a little bit. And so now we're dealing with new cymbals in the style of these older cymbals. I don't call them tributes. I don't call them clones. I call them reduxes.
Yeah.
A redux is essentially something inspired by something else. So it doesn't lock me into having to get everything perfect about what kind of tribute I'm trying to make. I can just, I use the original reference as a launching point to make something that is inspired by it, but will almost always, as we'll see, take certain liberties to change elements of it to make it more suitable to what I'm hearing as a maker. Tell us, what is it that you feel distinguishes older K Zildjians from new cymbals?
Yeah, the thing that I hear in all these old recordings, I mean, when I hear old Ks in person, when I hear the original recordings from, back in the 50s and 60s, is a very clear, defined stick sound.
Yeah.
And a very, I would say, pleasing bell sound. And there's a certain mellowness to the cymbal that, a lot of the times when we think of stick definition or very clear bell, we think higher pitched, brighter in tone, higher overtones. Some people like to use maybe the word piercing, right? But when I listen to a lot of those old recordings and all those older cymbals, I hear all these beautiful, darker, more mellow overtones, but it has enough definition to carry the stick pattern through the music. And so there's, obviously all these conversations that drummers have about, what the weights are on these older cymbals, because they sound really thin, but then you learn Tony Williams' Nefertiti ride was like 2,600 grams for a 22. I think the challenge for a lot of cymbal makers over the years, whether it's the independents or the bigger companies, is how do you capture that magic in a new cymbal?
Yeah.
And so a lot of, I think, manufacturers have tried to make them really thin, and then we find that it sounds great like right here, but then it doesn't really work in a band situation.
Say it again. Say
Right?
it again for those in the back.
Right? So yeah, it's because how it sounds, 3 feet from your ear is very different than, say, a pianist that's 20 feet away, or the audience. Jazz, of course, is acoustic music, and there's not a lot of sound reinforcement. And so, it would be wonderful if we could have close mics all the time on our cymbals, and that translates. But the way I see it is that the cymbal sound should translate in the room. We shouldn't need anything extraneous to really get the sound across. Obviously, we've had a lot of talks about this in the last few days. The age of the cymbal really does lend it to having that definition, to having that mellowness. And of course, there have been a lot of modern cymbals that try to evoke the older cymbals by adding patina. But I want to ask you, because you've had patina and then you kind of went away from it for a while, but now we're maybe back a little bit. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what about having kind of an artificial patina makes this work for you?
Okay, so great question. It's almost like we planned that question. We did not plan that question.
No, we didn't.
So I was, for a while, years, I was making a series called the Tributary series. And then fellow TR cymbal artist Jaska Lukarinen came to the shop, and we were exploring just like, patina, wide open versions of that Tributary. And after he left, I was like, this is the new Tributary. It's got to be like this. I had that thing I said, earn your patina. Like, I made a video where it was like, Some people like to buy ripped jeans, but why would you want to pay more to have the holes in them? Just make the holes in them yourself by wearing them. Earn your patina, that whole thing. And so fast forward to bringing on Mike Clark as an artist, I really had to go to the drawing board and figure out how am I going to get these cymbals to be dry enough and clicky enough, sticky enough to work for Mike and the music that he plays, which he was hipping me to the fact that what he's hearing is very much like the sound of jazz in the 50s, 60s, and that whole era. So I kind of went back to the patina a little bit, but I was doing more processes to it. It wasn't simply add an artificial patina, that dries it up. Because honestly, the chemical patinas don't really do a ton to mask the higher frequencies and make the stick definition more solid. It's really everything else you do around that patina, and then the patina is kind of like the cherry on top a little bit. It's the visual element that make it, you know, that people buy with their eyes all the time. So that is a more important element than maybe it should be, but really it comes down to this process that I've been developing of layering, hammering, lathing, hammering, lathing, burnishing, abrasion treatment, more hammering. You know, it's just kind of this never-ending process, and the short way of describing what that whole thing is doing is it's just getting me a more compressed outer layer to the bronze, which can help simulate what age does naturally to bronze. It
gets harder over time,
yes,
right?
It gets harder, it gets more brittle. A lot of the older Ks crack because that tin and the copper are separating, so the alloy is getting compromised over time. But that has a very pleasing sonic effect. As you were noting, with very thin cymbals can sound heavier than they are in terms of the stick definition. And then somehow on the reverse, like heavier cymbals can sound thinner than they are. It's like this magic thing that happens with cymbals that are decades and decades old.
The one thing I've always been curious about is if we could take a time travel machine back to 1950 and hear, you know, go to the Gretsch factory in Brooklyn and pick out, like, what would they sound like? I think another thing, I was just texting a good friend of mine about old Ks and this sound, and one thing that he brought up, which I thought was really important, is that the way that the cymbals were recorded back then, the older recording techniques using ribbon mics, which naturally are very colored, and they get rid of a lot of that high end in the sound. Of course, now, you know, we have like beautiful microphones with really clear interfaces, and you know, we try to almost patina the sound with like plugins and tapes, you know, tape saturators and all that stuff. So, you know, when we listen to those recordings, we're almost hearing a different version of that cymbal. And you can totally hear that when you listen to Elvin Jones or Tony Williams, you know, depending on the studio, the day, the way the mics were placed. It's like, it is the same cymbal, but it always has different sonic characteristics. It's the same reason why you have a cymbal you really love, you take it in a gig, it's in one room, you're like, oh, I love this. And then you take it in a completely different room, you're like, I don't know. You know, there's so many factors that, you know, that go into it. But I think what we're trying to do is just say, well, what is the amalgamation of all of these things that make these cymbals so coveted in the drum world? And then try, as you said, redux it. Because I don't think you can totally redux something that was very, I don't know, not even meant to be consistent. I mean, all those old cymbals have so much variance in the way they look, in the way the bells are shaped, in the profiles, the hammering. So it's like, really, what cymbal do you
try to aim at?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's why cloning these cymbals, I get it's a word people like, it's a marketing term. And tribute is a little better because you're doing a tribute to something. But I want to stay away from those terms just because of what they denote in people's minds. It's like it comes to mind like, oh, this is exactly like an old K. But the question really is like, is it though?
Yeah.
You know, is it really? Can it be? And my answer to that is no, it can't ever perfectly replicate what is happening in that 70-plus-year-old cymbal.
Yeah.
But you could do things as a maker, on my side of things, you can do things to sort of evoke the vibe a little more than copy. So
yeah, and I think that's what we are trying to go for with this particular redux of cymbals is just, you know, when I'm sitting here playing through all these cymbals, what I'm thinking about, or not even thinking, because I think thinking is a very slippery slope, because you start going like, oh, well, what about this overtone, or what about this weight, or this bell shape? What I think is, does this capture an essence
Yes.
or a vibe? Like when I play it, do I get transported back in time?
How does it feel?
How does it feel?
Yeah.
How does it make me feel when I'm playing the instrument? I particularly love this one. I played it on a gig a few days ago. I just couldn't stop playing it because it was just the vibe of the cymbal, the way it responded to how I like to play. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of it. You know,
Yeah,
it
well,
has
let's dive in now to that.
Let's
so
do it.
This is going to be your cymbal, and it is. Let's get the specs. It's 21 inches and 21 3/4 inches. That was a mouthful. 2,390 grams. This is one of the ones where it's kind of actually an early model Mike Clark prototype that ended up getting kind of scrapped, or I put it in a different category because it wasn't heading in the right direction for Mike or for that series development. And so I took it aside, I did some weight removal, I did that kind of layering process to it, and then it sat for about a month. And when we were picking through this rack was completely full of stuff. When we were picking through, that was like the first one you kind of went, you had that like look, like, huh, what's going on here? And this one I think exhibits the stick definition thing we're talking about. The bell is really kind of like the perfect cymbal to capture what we're saying about what is the old K bell and stick sound. So would you play it a little bit? We'll talk about it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, what I like about this one is it has a really low fundamental.
Yes.
It has that kind of drone that people really like, which that gives a lot of body to the sound, right? It's not thin. You know, as a main ride cymbal, that's what I look for, is just something that has a really nice low fundamental that has a lot of body to carry the sound, because low frequency carries a lot of energy, right? Think subwoofers, right? So you have that low fundamental, but you have plenty of high end. You know, like one thing I really liked about this is it still has that kind of shimmery high end, and that's going to help project the stick, right? But you still hear a lot of stick, right?
Yeah.
And then one thing that we should always kind of mention about vintage instruments is there's character, there's vibe, there's imperfections, right? Yeah, because, you know, for me, I think that's been my evolution as a musician, is I always went for the really pristine, clear, kind of perfect sounding instruments. And now I'm getting a little bit older and wiser, and just my musical tastes have broadened. I like kind of imperfection. Funk, yeah, like just, you know, it's not totally, you know, there are spots on this cymbal that maybe are not the best spots to play on, but that overall makes the cymbal have its own sound, its own character. Right? And makes every single one different.
For me too, I was like, what you said is exactly my take, is that that cymbal has the low bed kind of warm sound that you want, but typically that is also comes with a stick definition that's maybe a little muddy, and a lack of highs and a lack of character, a lack of maybe some hollowness, to where the definition wouldn't really carry when you have this kind of pitch. And so the way that I'm able to get that, really, it is that layering process, that kind of that technique to compress the outer part of the bronze to bring out that definition. If we were able to somehow put this in a machine that just basically got the same shape, same weight, but no patina and no surface hardening, it would be a wild cymbal, like a very, very wild cymbal. So in my mind, it's kind of my way of like putting it in a time machine, and then pulling it out 70 years older, or trying at least to aim in that direction. Let's just float through a couple others, because this one, you know, it's 21 3/4 and 2390, so a little under 22. I mean, this is like kind of the prime weight to me. Yeah. You know, like if it was right on 22 inches, it'd be like close to 2450, which is kind
Okay.
of my favorite. Typically my favorite 22-inch.
It strikes that balance between stick definition, wash, crashability, which I also really like in all of my cymbals.
Yes.
Right, I like to be able to lay into it and give a nice little crash. Yeah, so the problem that you had with this is that you've made like 5 cymbals that are all exactly like this, which is great. Right.
So this one is kind of going into a heavier weight class and a little bit of a different tone, not so warm and kind of like woody, a little bit more like it's got a little bit more attitude to it. And so this one is 22 inches and it weighs 2,443 and it's a taller shape.
Okay. I mean, you know who I think of?
Bill.
Bill Stewart.
Yeah.
And of course, Bill's cymbals are modeled after an old K that he had. And I think he has another old K that is really gnarly. It's got all these cutouts and
Yes.
it looks like a woodworm got in it, but it's like a bronze worm or something.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even just looking at it, the umbrella shape, and of course there's so much variance in the old Ks. Some of them were flatter, some of them had a more umbrella shape. But yeah, this really, I think, captures that Bill Stewart sound without
not the cymbal made by the big company, but the cymbal like the old K that these were modeled after.
Exactly. Yeah. That kind of high end. Yeah, a little bit more high end, more pronounced.
It's aggressive, but it's not too ornery.
Yeah.
I'd say,
Yeah, you can really shank it and get that nice kind of explosion, dragon's breath.
Clamp the wing nut down and you get even more of that Bill sound, real dry kind of thing. Yeah, so I liked how this one turned out.
Yeah, it was
and
beautiful.
So the next 22, it's like we're actually, somehow I did this almost perfectly where we're going like thinnest up to the heavier weight class, but we're gonna end with the thinnest one actually. This one's 22, right on 22, and it weighs 2,500. And so this is actually like a version like yours, but just 100 and some change heavier.
Okay. It's really close to the first one. And I hear just a little bit more stick because of that heavier weight.
Yep. Another way of saying what I hear in the older Ks that are really, really good, and something I actually aim for in almost all of my cymbals, is this sense of separation between the frequencies. So you kind of, in a way, if you could think about scooping out mid-range, leaving just the lows and the highs, you have a cymbal that can have all this vibe and elements to really inspire you to play it, but then the stick definition is just kind of sitting very clear so that it's not gonna get muddied up by anything. And I hear that in a lot of older Ks, like a lot of lows, a lot of growly stuff, but then the highs sit just way above it.
Yeah.
Which those are really gig friendly cymbals. You would be able to tell better than me.
Oh yeah. I mean, just from the span of the entire frequency range, from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, having that, I think the low mid is where you have all your muddiness, right? And then your kind of middle, like true mid range there's a lot of boxiness in there. And then higher mid range, maybe like 4K, 5K, that's where actually a lot of instruments want to sit in that mix, right? Like vocals are in there.
Yeah.
Of course, your snare drum. Actually, I mean, I'm a closet audio engineer. I find a lot of attack, like snare drum, bass drum beater, sits around that kind of 3,000 to 5,000 range. So if you have this that's muddying up that, and say you're on a master bus and you're trying to dip that's not really gonna, that's gonna start taking away from other elements, and especially when it comes to jazz, how most, as we're using 2 overhead mics and a kick drum mic, that's it. And so if you have to start doing surgery, then you're affecting everything, you know. Again, the way the drums were recorded back in the day is, sometimes you just had one mic just right here, And so, you need a cymbal that's going to complement what everyone's doing, but not get in the way. That was something when I watched all the Mike's videos, he was really talking about. It's just like, oh, this doesn't work with a piano player, or like this doesn't work, maybe with a horn player. And so, you got to think about all those things, which is really important to not only play your cymbal in your practice room, but also take it out and record it. Put a mic all the way, in the back of the room and just see, like, is that cymbal really doing what you want it to do? Because I've had plenty of cymbals that sound really great, and then you get it on a gig and you're like, nope, that ain't gonna work. So this is a beautiful one too. I mean, they're all beautiful.
The last of the 22s we have is like, I guess, relatively the thinnest one, because it's right on 22 inches and it weighs 2,401 grams.
Okay.
This is another cymbal where if the treatment wasn't there, if it was just that shape, that hammering, that weight, way wilder of a cymbal, way wilder.
But yeah, this one, I mean, they all have generally the same characteristics, which is, that's the goal of the project, is to try to like figure out what really makes these cymbals what they are, and then try to distill that into multiple instruments.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I think one thing I always notice is just the bell shape, because I know how much that impacts the sound of the cymbal. These tend to have lower, kind of flatter bells, dare I say.
Yes.
But yeah, it still gives a lot of, there's more high end in this one to me.
Yes.
But still, I mean, I can hear every note that I'm playing.
Yes.
Like, one thing I usually do with all of my cymbals is I throw a piece of 2 or tape underneath, because you're trying to control that kind of washiness, that super high end, but with this kind of processing on the cymbal, I mean, you get that right out of the box, which is great. Got that low drone.
Yeah, low drone that's just got the bed, but the bed is not kind of getting in the way.
Yeah.
This sort of sound to me is kind of a middle ground between going with something uber dry that you never have to think about. You can just play the way you want to play. The cymbal will never talk back to you, But too much of that and it gets kind of sterile and bland. And then too open and the cymbal is playing you. You're not really playing the cymbal. You're having to like make so many adjustments in the approach. And so I see this as kind of like a way to sort of thread the needle and try to get the best of both worlds into one.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because sometimes, and it all depends on the kind of music you play, what kind of situations that you're in. When we look at all of our heroes like Jack DeJohnette and Roy Haynes and Tony and Elvin, they all have like vastly different cymbal sounds, but they were also playing vastly different kinds of music.
Yeah.
And, the way that Jack plays, I think Jack is a funny outlier to me, because he plays like a washy cymbal, but he has really dry cymbals. But yeah, I mean, of course, like the washier or the more wild your cymbal is, you start going for those kind of faster, intricate patterns, and they just get lost.
Yeah.
But then the dry sound sometimes, like I've owned a few dry cymbals in my life, and I always feel like I have to play it more because there isn't enough sound.
Yeah.
But a cymbal that can kind of meld those two worlds together, where I feel like I can give it some space, and there's obviously, there's enough sound there where I can, maybe I don't have to play every quarter note, but then if I need to, and especially jazz drummers now, I mean, I've done a video about this on my YouTube channel about how, jazz drummers in 2026, you gotta have to kind of harken back to every era of jazz, right? So
somehow.
So if you're gonna play bebop and you gotta go here, or if you want to play ECM and go, right, do you have a cymbal that can kind of hang with both of those things? Because I've had cymbals where it works great for that, and then you try to do a fast pattern for bebop, and it just totally washes out.
Yep.
And then, you know, vice versa.
Vice versa. Wow.
So, you know, again, this style of cymbal is also coveted for that reason, because they're really versatile. You
Yes.
can use them in a lot of different, you know, scenarios and situations, and it just kind of works. I mean, we were talking about Bob Moses, right? And he had an intermediate stamp, and he said he used it on every recording.
Yeah.
That
He
he
was
ever did.
18 or something.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that speaks to the versatility of this particular sound.
Right.
And I think that's why we all want cymbals like this.
Exactly.
You know? So
Yeah.
this one's, I mean, they're all four of them are great.
I like, I'm super happy with these 4, and we'll see which ones end up in the batch, other than yours, obviously. But let's
Sorry, everybody.
Let's deal with some 20s, actually.
Yeah,
and then we can talk about hats for a few minutes.
Okay.
But let's put yours up. It'll be our mainstay 22 from here on out. I mean, honestly, the one you brought is kind of the vibe as well.
Yeah, that's a Tributary.
Well, let's just deal with it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
I mean, I picked this one up maybe a month and a half ago at the Chicago show. And what drew me to it is, I would say this kind of has an old K kind of vibe. I don't think that was your intention necessarily.
It was the classic Tributary. It still had a lot of those layering processes, a lot of,
Yeah. What I liked about this, it's a 19 and a half, and it weighs 16.99.
Nice memory.
Nice memory.
Whoa.
And what I like about it is I like my left sides to really open up. I like to use them as crash rides. So it has to have this. Like, I got to be able to hit it, and it you know. But then also sometimes you'll hit it and it's really too much, and then, you know, a lot of cymbals will explode and then come right back down. So that's what drew me to this. It's a little bit drier, I would say, than most like crash rides.
Yeah.
But before I was using your cymbals exclusively, my left side, I loved how it sounded. It had a really nice crash. But almost every time I would ask somebody, "Oh yeah, how's that cymbal?" They're like, "I kind of lose the stick." You know, like, you know, that gets lost. And so what I really liked about this one is that the stick definition is very much there.
Has that separation.
Yeah, but then when I really want to, you know, lay into it, it's there, right?
Probably be able to get into like a big crash and then right back to stick, and it would allow for that kind of playing too. You're not necessarily having to just crash and then wait for it to die before you come back in. Yeah, to drive the time if you need to do that.
And then this one also has a lot of character. It's funky.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you know, gritty. It's got some funky overtones.
Yeah.
But there's never a hum.
Right.
Right. It's just, it's got that. It's a cool cymbal. So yeah, I picked it up, and then I find that these two go really well.
Yeah,
together,
they do.
right?
Yeah.
So they're similar in many ways, but they have enough contrast
to
where, you know, and this one I'll probably put some rivets in there just
Yes.
to kind of give more contrast.
Yeah, we'll go down the line on this one too, these two. So this is a 19 3/4 inch at 1,897 grams. I will say almost all, if not, all but 2 of these have a fully hand-formed bell,
Okay.
which allows me to get the old K bell style, which is not perfect, a little bit humped on one side,
Yeah.
and you know, just I don't go super far in that direction.
Yeah.
I don't go too crazy, because then you end up having issues shaping the rest of the cymbal if you've got this crazy lump on one side. So I kind of like, again, it's a redux. It's like I'm taking inspiration from that. This one's funky though.
Okay.
Definitely funky. It's got like a clang, a slight clang to it. That's
It's wild.
sort of nasty.
Yeah.
It's a wild cymbal, a little bit more of a tough to control kind of sound. But again, trying to capture that sort of, that old K sort of thing. A lot of them were and are very wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has that stick though. Maybe a little bit more open than the 22s.
Right.
But again, this kind of weight and size, that's kind of what you expect.
Yes.
Right? You know, around 1900 grams versus something like 2000 or 2100.
Yes.
Right? That's a huge difference. I can also feel like when I choke it, there's a hook.
Yeah, oh yeah.
There's a hook right here, yeah.
Hardcore.
So, and that totally contributes to that kind of openness, that
Yeah.
kind of crashability. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that would make a great left side.
Yeah.
Or a main if you want it lighter.
Right.
Right.
They would probably be good with rivets too, I think.
Oh yeah. I feel like a lot of these cymbals would work well with the addition of rivets, because again, that kind of like tapered off high end, the rivets add that sparkle back into it.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes rivets accentuate like the wrong part of a cymbal.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
This one, okay, so this one is modeled after the old stamp,
Looks like
19
it, yeah.
and a half that we dealt with in the last video, which was really heavier, way heavier than I like cymbals to be, very clangy. So this is kind of like a take on that cymbal. This one's actually a little bit over 20 inches, 20 and a quarter, and it weighs 2,206 grams.
Okay, so this is gonna be a lot different.
Oh yeah, a lot different.
Okay. Yeah, right off the bat, I mean, it has, because of that weight,
Yeah.
a lot more stick.
Beef.
Beef, yeah.
A lot
This
of
is
body to it.
main ride territory.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah. And I would, you know, my take, given what you said earlier, I think that was a little nugget you said earlier about the ribbon microphones coloring the sound of all of our favorite classic recordings, and maybe making some of those cymbals sound thinner than they were. I mean, this to me is like all day probably what we heard like Art Blakey play.
Oh yeah.
What we heard Philly Joe play, but in our minds it's this thin, dark, washy thing. But really, they were probably more cymbals like this. I mean, I listened to some of Billy Higgins' K's later on when he was playing older K's, and the way that the stick is sitting above the rivets, I'm just like, that is not a really thin cymbal.
And then what you just said, intermediate stamp isn't until 1959.
Right.
Right? So what's Philly playing on those 56 Prestige recordings with Miles? I mean, it can't be an intermediate stamp. It's got to be an old stamp.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, this kind of design, this kind of...
And we were talking in the last video about how like the old stamp cymbals, like that was when jazz was evolving and becoming a thing. So those cymbals weren't necessarily being made for jazz. They were kind of a holdover from like marching orchestral era type cymbals that were heavier, you know, meant to really ring out for a long time. And then as that period of time went on, maybe the cymbal designs changed a little bit more, and you started seeing more of those thinner ones that were more suited for jazz players. And then intermediate and new, you have that's firmly in the jazz era.
Yeah.
Some of the jazz eras that were really defining all of music for drum set. And so you had more intentional designs maybe going into how those cymbals were made, like the weights and everything.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, okay, we'll do my early model one.
Okay.
This one is a press bell one, and this one is modeled after the intermediate stamp.
Yeah. Looks
That
like
we
it.
dealt with last time, and it weighs 2,051 grams, right on 20. Press bell, a little bit taller. Brilliant finish with the heavy pin lathe passes in it. So this will be a wildly different sound.
Okay.
This is an outlier in this whole set because it is the only one that has not had that layered process treatment that I was talking about.
Still sounds good.
It still kind of captures that vibe, but it's definitely more open sounding.
For sure.
Definitely washier. And I can actually go in and there's a process I might do to this one of burnishing to sort of like harden up the outer layers of it to kind of give it a little bit more control and separation in the frequencies.
Yeah.
It might not need it. It's one of those things where it's like I could do that, try to get that sound now, or let it out into the wild and let time do its thing.
Yeah.
And it'll be there eventually, someday, you know?
The thing, I mean, I don't know if it's subconscious, but I caught myself that one, just like I play it and then I immediately catch like, this is Elvin to me. Like I'm thinking like Elvin on McCoy Tyner's The Real McCoy, like Passion Dance, you know, that kind of, you know, that bell, you know. And yeah, because it has that complexity, it has the crashability, but it also has that stick definition. But yeah, I mean, it's got a beautiful wash to it. Yeah, that's, yeah, like you said, age, if that went for 70 years, it would probably be like all the others.
All right, last up we have this one, which is a 20-inch, weighs 1,730 grams. Play it first and then we'll reveal what it is.
I was like enamored.
Yeah. It's kind of a wild cymbal. This is the 4th cymbal I ever made.
Okay.
And
that's pretty good.
well, I mean, it's kind of, in some way it kind of goes to show when someone who's swinging a hammer that doesn't really know what they're doing, sometimes you strike gold, and it's like, why did you strike gold? You didn't have the technique to strike gold, but you did. It's kind of like, I mean, maybe it's a little bit the beginner's mind going on. I mean, as a maker, I look at it, it's got all these weird issues to it that I wouldn't make a cymbal like this nowadays, but I was just figuring things out. I got my hands on it again. I'll never sell it. It was way thinner than I would typically go for in a 20, 1,730 grams. It's got a nice umbrella-shaped curvature to it. It like flat portion sort of dips at the bell. It shouldn't sound good in my mind. And when I look at it, it shouldn't really sound good, but it's got a vibe to it. It has kind of that same thing as the new stamp, the thinner new stamp we played.
I was going to say, is this the cymbal that we compared?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty much like that new stamp.
Yeah, it's a thinner version of it. I had been modifying cymbals for years, so I had some technique, but I really was figuring out like taking a blank from absolutely nothing into a shape, a finished cymbal.
I think this goes to show that I think what makes you guys as independent cymbal makers, what sets you apart from, like we talked about in the last video, is that you guys are drummers. You guys are musicians. Like you have the sound that you are hearing as you're making the cymbal. So, you know, I could assume you're hammering, you put it on the lathe, you kind of see, oh, well, maybe it needs this. You know, I think, you know, we talked about, and, you know, there's a lot of people in the industry that can corroborate, you know, people that were making these cymbals, they were just making them and not really thinking about like what exactly is the sound, or
what am I trying to achieve here?
Yeah, like how's the stick, or is there, you know, is there a hum, you know? And that's why you might buy a cymbal from a major manufacturer and you get it and it doesn't quite work, or it has a hum or something like that. You know, that's mainly a mass production thing, but you know, to have somebody making instrument with that sound in mind, they kind of hear what the cymbal wants to do, and then you're like, all right, let's make it.
You're aiming at a goal.
Yeah, and then and then oddly enough, you put it next to a new stamp and then it's like almost identical.
Yeah.
So.
Because someone, I mean, you know, maybe the guy making that new stamp was one of the newer guys learning how to do it. So, you know, but yeah, that's like part of it's like the magic of this whole thing. There's like, there's some magic in there, some unknown, some chaos in there, and it's like, as a maker, sometimes I make two, or I make one I love and I try to make it again, and then it just is not happening. Which, I mean, is like playing, like some days.
I was gonna say, it's just like taking a solo. You know, you have that great take on a recording session, and then you're like, oh, let me do that again, and then it completely folds. You know. And I mean, some of it, I think, whatever your intention is, you know, it's like if you are just playing and you're just in the moment, some of the greatest stuff comes out. But then you kind of go into it like, okay, I'm going to do this kind of thing. I'm going to start my solo this way, and then I'm going to move to this kind of theme, and then I'm going to do this variation and tie it back around. If you have that going on in your mind, never ends well.
It never ends well. Yeah. So I mean,
or it's just bland. You know.
Or it's just bland. Yep. And it feels manufactured. You know? You're trying to engineer a good solo.
Yeah, and again, that's what we were talking about in the last video. Is there's a huge connection between the player and the instrument.
Yes.
And just, I mean, all these processes are exactly the same. So I think that's why this kind of thing is so resonating with us.
Yeah.
Because it's like the imperfection or the in the moment of making these instruments kind of translates into how we play them.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's deal with just hi-hats for a couple
Okay.
seconds. So what do you hear in older K hi-hats? What is your, how do you conceptualize that?
Definition, you know. I mean, I think hi-hats, I love hi-hats personally. I mean, they're my favorite part of the kit because they're so musical. They have so many different sounds. One thing I always hear in old K hi-hats is just a lot of definition, especially in the foot sound. And again, you know, I think the drummers that were selecting these cymbals, they needed that sound, right? They needed that kind of really defined, you know, chick from it, because that's what is helping keeping time for the band. You know, one of my favorite hi-hat sounds ever is Kenny Clarke on Miles Davis's Walkin', 1954. Listen to that. He keeps time on the hi-hat for the in-head. That's like the best, I'm assuming they're old Ks, but that's the best hi-hat sound I've ever heard.
Ooh.
It's just, they're dark, they're trashy, they have some character, but they're really definitive. I mean, you can hear every note. You can tell they're not too heavy. That was still probably in the era where both cymbals were around the same weight, right? But yeah, they have this really nice, defined chick, and you know, keeping time in that way. I mean, not to go down the history rabbit hole, but the low boy up to the sock cymbal, right?
Yes.
You know, playing it with your stick needs to have the same kind of characteristic as a ride cymbal. It's got to have a little bit of wash, a little bit of definition, right? But then, speaking of Kenny Clarke, right? He invented this, right? So, yeah, that's what I hear in all those old Ks. And no matter if it's Tony Williams playing two bottoms,
Right.
you know, or the older, you know, super thin matched pair, I think it's just definition, clarity, right? That's what you want in hi-hats.
You said clarity, definition. I would argue, I agree with that, and I would also argue that as time went on, you know, in a sense, the hi-hats got even more clear and more defined.
Yeah.
But it was more so that they got heavier and heavier and heavier to compete with electric instruments. And so when hi-hats especially get into that really, really chunky zone, a lot of the body gets kind of squashed, and you just are left with high ping, like a piercing shrillness. And so it is kind of a magic thing when you have a thinner set of hats that have that clarity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, the clarity in the, you know, 70s, 80s was about volume.
Yes.
It just needed volume. And then here it's about clarity in terms of definition.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
You know,
yeah.
really, I mean, you want the band to hear that.
Right.
And that's what I look for. And, you know, if I'm demoing hi-hats, we did this earlier, the first thing I do is that. That's like my moniker. If it doesn't do that, then I'm like, nope, next pair.
Right.
Because that's what I need. And of course, as jazz evolves, this becomes a comping voice too.
Yes.
So having that definition, you know, if I'm playing this, I want to make sure all those notes come out the way I want them to.
Yes, and they're not going to come out if the cymbals are too heavy.
Yeah,
You know,
and
they're gonna feel sluggish, and as Jaska says, sleepy.
Sleepy, yeah. I mean, there was this pair, and then there's a pair of 15s that we were talking about where I was like, yeah, they play like 14s because, again, if you want them to move, it's just physics, you know. If it's a heavier top, you need more energy to compress those cymbals, right? Speaking of those 15s,
Let's deal with those.
all right.
So what we just heard were 14.5-inch.
That's my favorite size.
Yeah, I love it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
The response and feel of a 14, the pitch of a 15.
Yeah,
14.5, everybody. There it is.
Split the difference.
926 over 1037.
Okay.
So, I mean, all of these hats, we're dealing with like the thinner side of these sounds. So this is 15-inch, 970 over 977.
Ooh.
Real thin.
Almost exactly.
Yeah, almost perfectly match weighted.
Yeah. Beautiful. And of course, every hi-hat, you gotta, you know, everyone's different.
Figure out where it wants to sit. The definition thing you're talking about really is definition at a lower pitch. Like if you can have a low pitch and definition, I mean, we kind of alluded to that with the rides too. It's like low pitch with definition, dark with definition is kind of the magic zone for, in general, not as a rule, but in general for jazz.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You can have high pitch and definition go hand in hand all the time. But it comes with other stuff that we don't typically like.
Exactly. Yep. I also like the shoulder sound. Like I like to test, you know, hi-hats in a bunch of different ways. And also, you know, speaking of Mike Clark, you know, the kind of old school like funk soul records.
Yes.
I don't think they were using new beats yet, you know, but. I'm not going to try a new mic. But, or even just. Yeah. That's why I love hi-hats. They're just incredibly musical and versatile.
Yeah,
and, you know, but yeah, I mean, you kind of need that sound for that kind of music, you know. And again, I guess the new beats came into play with rock and roll, and you need that heavier bottom to help project. So
yes,
yeah.
So those are nice, and then these are some actual 14s, and then we have one more set after that.
Okay.
Or maybe two. We decide to go that route. So these ones I was really aiming after the vibe of the old stamp hats from the last video that were a little under 14 inches, like 13 and 7/8, and they were right at like 906 over 916, something like that. So these are right on 14, really small, low profile hand formed bell, and this is 891 over 1044. So this is a little bit less the match weighted thing, a little bit more like projection from the bottom hat, but also allows me to get a thinner weight on the top.
Yeah, which I think that weight relationship is like a harmonious, maybe middle ground. Yeah, right? Because now I feel there's a lot more presence, more body to that, yeah. Those are beautiful.
Yeah, I like those. They might get a little tweak before all said and done. But all right, these ones are the other 14s that are. This is kind of a. You could tell me, you could be honest if you don't like these.
Okay.
So I'm going for really thin and really low profiles.
Okay.
That's the thing that like I noticed in some older K hi-hats is that somehow they're so thin and the shapes are very low, so it's like nothing about that should really work. It should be a muddy mess. So this was me attempting to get that kind of really thin, really low sound.
Yeah. I mean, they sound to me like old 40s, 50s. Yeah.
A little bit of a hollow thumpy thing happening. You'd have to kind of mess with them a bit, but there is definition there.
Oh yeah. And the chick is there. The other thing,
785 on the top, 859 on the bottom.
Okay,
and the
so
859 bottom is like, I mean, it's like basically dead flat.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, the thing about these thin hi-hat cymbals, and I don't think I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it in this way, so maybe this is my contribution to all of it. But like when I'm teaching students, which is what I primarily do, I always talk about how the hi-hat has to be strong in your mix, right? When you're playing, there's, you know, obviously the balance of your ride cymbal, your snare drum, your bass drum. I think a lot of younger players are afraid to play their hi-hat because, and this is where, you know, gear shouldn't matter, but it does matter because most younger players are kind of coming into this. They might have maybe a set of like B8 alloy hats, or maybe rock hi-hat cymbals, and you
Good
just
old new beats.
you press them just a little bit, and it's just like, right? It's just there.
Yeah.
But what I tell my students is you have to have a thinner set of hi-hats so that you can feel comfortable really playing the hi-hat with your feet, but they're not going to be so loud that they overtake the band. So then you can really feel comfortable. This always happens in ballads. They're just so afraid to play. They're just, you know, but I mean, pretend I'm playing brushes, but even if I was at a really slow tempo, you have to have it there. Right? And if I have thinner hats, I can give it a little bit of foot and it won't overtake, right? That's what we call grown-up tempo. You know, that like, but yeah, I mean, these are really, I think we were talking, I had a set of hats that had the super low profile and I loved them and they had all this definition and complexity. So yeah, these are pretty cool.
That to me is, I mean, I don't ever want to go lower than that. If I had like 200 more grams on this cymbal, I could go that low all day and they'd be great because the mass would keep them strong. All right, maybe I'll just throw one last set up there and you could play us out.
Okay.
These are another set of really thin 15s, 978 on the top, 1033 on the bottom.
Okay.
Hand-formed bell on the top, pressed on the bottom. So a little mix and match action going on. Any final thoughts after we played through all of my reduxes?
Yeah. Well, I think you're really, I mean, I know I'm an artist, but I'm serious when I say this is capturing, I think, that essence of what we're all looking for in these older cymbals. And, you know, obviously it's all about the music first and the sound first. And, you know, I think people really notice when you're getting that kind of sound. And so, and it also makes you play different. You know, I loved playing. I think the reason why this one is coming home with me is because it makes me play in such a way where I feel inspired. It kind of, you know, harkens back to that tradition that we're all, you know, honoring. And so, you know, all these different cymbals, they all have their own character. They all have their own sound. But, you know, again, they're reduxes. It's your take on the vintage sound. And so, you know, if it resonates with you, then I'm sure there's a batch drop coming.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the whole reason we dive into this is just to kind of evoke that particular sound. So
yeah, evoke it and also like make it modern. I think there's part of me is also thinking like, you know, music is. We were talking about this on Friday. Music is so much different. It's changed so much that there's different needs. Like you said it even in this session right here. You said drummers have to kind of take into account every era of jazz.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays if they're playing jazz drums, they're not, you know, part of the bebop era only because there's all the stuff that came after. So there's a sense of wanting to take, you know, taking the vibe, but like do it in a way that like you could take one of these cymbals and play a R&B hip hop gig with
for sure.
You could play anything if you have like a gig at a bar where it's just improvised music and it's a lot of beat stuff. You could still use this kind of stuff in that scenario as well. That's at least the attempt. I'll always be grateful to older K Zildjian cymbals. Some people think I'm not. I have a little bit of a defiancy in me, and I think that there's not a lot of value in the older stuff because I'm willing to do things to those older cymbals from time to time. But I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for that tradition.
Of course.
You know, and what those sounds signify and the drummers that played them. So
yeah, I think a great point to end on is that, you know, I think it's a trend. It's kind of the anti-trend in 2026 or like the times that we're living in is we're really looking for timeless things. whether it's, you know, fashion or cars, or I mean, or whatever, you know, like I'm just thinking about like clothing. I mean, I'm wearing like a pair of Vans shoes, I mean, which were popular in the 1970s, right? And they're still popular now.
Yeah.
And so when I think of these sounds, it's like trends will come and go. This sound will always be here. And there's always going to be a group of musicians that want this kind of sound, and it's going to be in the music in different ways.
It's not a fad.
It's not a fad.
Yeah.
It'll stand the test of time, and that's why these cymbals are still around, and that's why, you know, people are paying a lot of money for them. So, you know, this is kind of, for us as players, but for you as makers, it's a way to keep this kind of timeless tradition alive.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
In the same way that people still make things in the old style, like people still make watches and people still make, you know, handcrafted furniture and stuff like that, because it's timeless and it'll always be here, right?
Yeah, and there's people want that kind of something that was made by someone who used their hands and not an automated machine or AI or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I don't want to hear what an AI cymbal would sound like.
No.
Anyway, here's some 15-inch hats. Yeah. All right. Adjust a little bit. There we go.
That woo was your playing, not the cymbals.
I mean, I thought it was the cymbals.
Okay, no, cool. It means different things to different people.
I know.
We'll end it there. Guys, thank you for hanging out with us. Be on the lookout soon for an old K recreation project with some of these style cymbals. And please check out Michael D'Angelo. His YouTube channel is awesome. The reason I'm doing this mic's placement is because of his YouTube channel. So go watch that video. And Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Tim.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks for watching.